Hey everybody, I'm going to go ahead and jump on live now. We'll may or may not have a few people jump on and join us. Otherwise, in the meantime, we'll get going. So thanks for watching the recording. Busy time, busy semester for a lot of you. I know a lot of you are finishing up the semester. So keep on going strong. We're just getting into the fun stuff. So what I'll do, I'll probably send a note out to everybody or a survey or something to see if there is a better time. Wednesday night's going to be the best night for me, but if we need to shift this to 8 Mountain Time or what, I'm happy to look at a time change on that, 8 or 8:30, or might work to at least allow a few of us to join and have a good discussion, because I know some of you are meeting with your groups tonight too. So understand there's a lot going on. So sexual harassment, fun topic, right? We wake up in the morning, we say, I'm excited to learn about sexual harassment. It's one of those necessary evils in the workplace, and I think through the reading about doohickeys, any experiences that you've had in the workplace, you might understand that of how important it is to have good training on this topic and a good understanding of it. So just to start out, I've got a scripture to share, because sometimes I wonder, well, why do we have sexual harassment issues in the workplace? Why do we have problems in the workplace? Why do we have to deal with some of the stuff we do? I don't know the answer to that. One thought that does come to mind is that we are all human. We're not perfect. We're very fallen in our nature sometimes. We interpret things people say differently. We say things the wrong way. We get in bad behavior patterns. But at the end of the day, we need to know about these issues because we need to care for people. If people are being victimized by issues at work, that is not good, because it's illegal. And we spend a lot of time at work. Work needs to be a place that is comfortable, or at least conducive to feeling safe and secure. Mosiah 3:19, for the natural man is an enemy to God, and has been from the fall of Adam, and will be forever and ever, unless he yields to the enticings of the Holy Spirit, and putteth off the natural man, and becometh a saint through the atonement of Christ the Lord, and becometh as a child, submissive, meek, humble, patient, full of love, willing to submit to all things which the Lord seeth fit to inflict upon him, even as a child does submit to his father. I'm thankful for that verse because I like the list of attributes at the end. Did you catch that? Become as a child. And as a child, children are submissive, meek, humble, patient, full of love, and willing to submit. So I hope that we're all giving some thought regularly to our discipleship, to those attributes that we're working on, whether it be patience or humility or meekness. We can work on those, but it's only through the atonement. On our own, we're fallen and we're messed up, and we're going to have a difficult time. But through the atonement and yielding to the enticings of the Spirit and asking for help in recognizing those enticings, we can become better people every day. And I'm thankful for that process, because I know I make mistakes, but I know I can overcome them and be new again. So that's the gospel we enjoy, and I love to learn about that. And what a great opportunity we have to be at BYU Idaho to learn in our career fields and our fields of study, but also connect that with the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's a privilege. That's a big privilege, and I hope that you're taking advantage of that. Couple items: doohickey paper due on Monday morning. Okay. For some reason the link isn't working. Sorry about that. I'll work on that. It usually has something to do with the groups configured in iLearn. I have those configured. I just need to go and try to find out what's going on. In the meantime, go ahead and email me your paper, and we'll do it that way. That's not a big deal. Okay, so email me your paper and we'll be good to go. I just need one email from each group. You don't all need to email it to me. Just one from each group. Second thing, thank you for jumping onto the survey, the little survey in the Google community about the learning model principles. I always think it's a good idea to review the learning model. That's unique to BYU Idaho. I think there's some powerful principles in there, and a lot of you have responded so well to that question of which is most important. Obviously, there's not a right or wrong answer, but that's the discussion I wanted to create. I really love your perspective on why you chose the principle that you chose, and invite you to focus on one or more of those principles this semester. I'm sorry, I have an itchy nose. um, so if you'll continue to respond to that survey, I've heard from a handful of you, but there's a good chunk of you that we haven't heard from. So we'll leave that up for a little while longer, okay? All right, so jumping into sexual harassment. Very, very legally backed subject and topic. We know doohickeys is having issues with it. We need to be able to talk about it. So referring you back to the eeoc.gov website, there is a fact sheet about sexual harassment, and there is a list of 5 bullet points that can be helpful in kind of the understanding the scope of sexual harassment. So think about this in the lens of an organization. So if you are a business or an organization, you need to know how to address this stuff. So it says sexual harassment can occur in a variety of circumstances, including but not limited to the following. The victim, as well as the harasser, may be a woman or a man. The victim does not have to be of the opposite sex. That's a good one to be aware of. So I recently read of a case that involved sexual harassment male to male. And that's an interesting situation because at first glance, it's like, oh, they were just being guys. They were just bugging the other guy and giving him a bad time. Well, turned out it was that plus more, and there was comments being made that were sexual in nature or sexually offensive, and that created a hostile work environment. So definitely falls under sexual harassment. So it doesn't have to be male to female only. It can be female to female, male to male. Okay. Second one, the harasser can be the victim's supervisor, an agent of the employer, a supervisor in another area, a coworker, or a non-employee. Okay. So this is a big one. For example, right now in my workplace, we're under construction. We're getting a whole site refresh. So our whole site's under construction, new carpet, new desks, new ceiling, new wiring, everything. So we have a team of contractors walking through the building throughout the day, 8 to 5. Okay, so what that turns into is, okay, so if the harassment is coming from one of these vendors, the company I work for is still responsible for that. You can't dismiss it and say, oh, well, they don't work for the company. Well, the harassment happened while on company business or on company property, and so we have to be aware of that. So that's something to be aware of as well. What are your contractor regulations and situations? Notice that it can be a non-employee. So we had an issue with one of our employees' husbands was out in the parking lot catcalling women as they walked out the building. Thankfully we got it addressed properly through HR means and also our security team, but that very well could have turned into a harassment situation, and it did create some complaints. So you never know the angle things can take. Third bullet, the victim does not have to be the person harassed, but could be anyone affected by the offensive conduct. That's a good one. So what if we're witnessing sexual harassment? For some reason, the person being harassed is okay with it. Maybe they're comfortable with it for some reason, or they're okay with the inappropriate joke or whatever's being said. That does not mean if it makes you and I uncomfortable that it's a done deal. What that means is if it's making us uncomfortable or creating undue discomfort for us while at work, we have a claim on harassment as well. Okay. The next one, unlawful sexual harassment may occur without economic injury to or discharge of the victim. So that means, there's different ways that harassment can be addressed. And what that is it's safeguarding against unfairly toward the victim of the harassment. So you want to be aware of that. Because if I report something, if I'm getting harassed, I'm not going to be retaliated against for reporting that behavior. Okay? And that's a huge deal. And that's one of the number one messages whenever I have a complaint come my way about sexual harassment or a discriminatory situation. There's always a message for one or both or all three or more parties involved. That number one message is do not retaliate. And often I will have them sign a confidentiality agreement saying, okay, this has been brought forward. This is being investigated by human resources. Talk no further about this. Okay? And that's a big deal. So I actually last year had an employee who just the only way I describe it is he had a broken filter. What he thought was appropriate and okay to say to women was definitely not okay and appropriate to say to women or to men. He was saying things to men as well. Definitely not appropriate in general and definitely not appropriate for the workplace. So I got numerous complaints. We got documented complaints written from each person, confidentiality agreements, and person who was doing harassing, because of the amount of statements I had, we also had him sign a confidentiality agreement. And lo and behold, a week later, he goes and asks one of the main victims what she had talked with HR about. And you know what? He probably was not going to be terminated. He was going to be moved to a different department and disciplined. He was not going to be terminated, but because of that breach of that confidentiality, we did terminate him. So there's different ways to handle that. And confidentiality is unique because we always say, yes, we're going to be confidential as possible. It's hard to investigate a complaint or a situation being fully confidential because you have to talk to witnesses, you have to do some research and get the facts. So keep that in mind. We do value confidentiality. We definitely value the respect, and we ask for that. But it's not always going to be 100% confidential. But they're gonna do the best they can to keep that at a minimum. The final bullet: the harasser's conduct must be unwelcome. So here's the key there: who gets to decide what's unwelcome? So if I'm having a conversation with my good work buddy, and we're joking, we're chumming around, probably a little shady on the jokes or whatever we're saying, and Susan from the other room walks by, makes her uncomfortable. Do we get to decide what's unwelcome? No. Okay, so we do not get to determine that. But it does have to be unwelcome. If it's welcomed, I guess so be it. It's harder to make a claim out of it. There's definitely another opportunity to coach some behavior and say, hey, you're making people uncomfortable. This could lead to this. This leads to this kind of perception, but it has to be unwelcome. So I just thought that was a good rundown by the EEOC of some of the key circumstances that need to be involved with sexual harassment. You've read the Lone Star case this week. There's a lot in there, kind of a unique scenario. You get to find out how that ends up, and you get to discuss with your groups how you feel about that. Okay, it's interesting. So let me know how you feel about that, and if we had people on, we would be able to discuss that. But I'll let you discuss that with your groups. I know some of you have done that already this week. If you're getting victimized, if you think you have a case of sexual harassment or discrimination, there's some important things you can do. The first thing is, don't let it fester. Don't let the behavior continue. The first question I always ask people in many situations is, what have you done to address the situation with this person? What's your goal in the situation? What action have you taken? And then if you have taken action and there's no change, that's when you need to report up to your manager or go over to HR or the EOC office, EEO office, or something like that. So um, try to resolve it, and then if it escalates further, that's where you take other action. Second thing, provide evidence. Now, how do you provide evidence of harassment? Um, a lot of times, documentation is the key. So when certain instances happen, take note of it. Write down the date, write down the time, write down the people involved, and write down any witnesses. That's really going to help in an HR investigation. If it's discriminatory with maybe a promotion or a hiring issue, you're going to want to provide copies of successful performance reviews, applications, anything of that sort to show that hey, I did qualify. Hey, there's no reason I should have been disqualified. And if you're claiming discrimination because of race or gender or disability, you have to be able to prove it. Otherwise, if there's not enough evidence there, it's hard to move forward. Okay. The final thing I'd mention is if you have those complaints, stay confidential and don't retaliate either. Don't continue to stir the pot. Don't go over and say, hey, I've reported this to HR, you better watch out, because that's not going to help, right? So just a few thoughts for you on sexual harassment, or as you've seen in the EEOC website, there's big money involved in these lawsuits. And so at a company level now, we are thinking through this, and we're learning in our class how we need to approach this stuff, okay? So you've talked with your groups about, hey, what about a policy? What should a sexual harassment policy sound like? I've listened in on a few of your meetings, and you've done a great job. A couple things to hit on there. So you want to make sure that the employee knows what their rights are. And what I would recommend there is make sure you can just directly reference the sexual harassment phrasing found in the Civil Rights Act, Title VII. Recognize the protected status, age, gender, disability, religion, veteran status, marital status, sexual orientation, all of those things, pregnancy. Those are all protected areas. And then be sure to have verbiage in there about sexual harassment being anything unwelcome, a hostile work environment, or anything that's quid pro quo, intimidating, or inappropriate work environment. The next thing is you want to have a process. So, okay, so I'm having this issue. Who do I talk to? What's the process? And so many of you have workplaces where you clearly know. Others of you have maybe wondered, like, what would I do? If you are a leader or a manager, you need to know that process. Who do I talk to? Do I report it to HR? Is there an EEO office? Do I work through my manager? Do I need to provide something in writing? What's the time frame involved? And having those things spelled out into a policy makes things clear, understandable. You can train your organization on regularly, annually or biannually is usually what you see. Okay, so I know you're reading all that. I just thought I'd pull out a few examples. You'll see, talk about some things that I've experienced. If you have questions, let me know. You're going to want to be able to be clear and concise with your doohickeys papers in really talking about, yes, here's a problem, here's a solution, but what I want to see in your solutions is, okay, I want to see clarification of and how it will be implemented and how it will benefit the business. Okay, so pretend I'm a CEO. I want to say, okay, how's this going to improve my operation? How's this going to improve my bottom line? Some of this training and stuff is going to cost me money. Why should I be interested in it? So that's kind of how you're speaking to me in these papers. And I do that because when you're in the business field, you have to be able to support your reasons. justify your actions. Okay, so these papers are an opportunity to do that. So if you have questions or want me to run through anything or want any feedback as you get things put together, let me know. I'm happy to help. Happy to jump in on a meeting if I'm available, or we can hop on a Hangout anytime. Just schedule some time with me and I'm happy to discuss that with you. Okay, you all are doing great. Just keep meeting with your teams. I'm seeing video posts for the most part from most of you. There's a couple groups I'm not sure, so just let me know how the meetings are going, and we'll do that throughout the semester. Okay. If anything else comes along, I'll be sure to shoot you an email. Have a great evening. Okay, take care.